Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Ayleen with Medicine Walk with Dr. Ayleen. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about the concept of helplessness. And that's something that a lot of people feel. And one of the things that can really inspire that is when things are happening around us that we have no control over. And part of it is that frustration at wanting to have control over something and we can't. And first, I would like to welcome everybody. The chat room will be open. So if you have any questions or comments or anything you'd like me to address, then please type it in there, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. And also, if you are enjoying what you're hearing, then please go ahead and hit the little heart or the little like button. And it's just going to be about us creating a community together. So, first off, I want to offer my absolute most heartfelt prayers and blessings to go out to everyone who is in the path or who has been in the path of Hurricane Matthew. I was living in Louisiana with my family during Hurricane Andrew, and I remember how scary that can be. I remembered that even though we were living in an area that did not require evacuation, they were saying, well, no, you guys should be fine. Just kind of hunker down, and the worst of it should miss you. And there was still that piece of, okay, we're being told it's going to be all right, but we weren't sure. And for the first time, to have one of those, emergency, broadcast tones come up, and for it to say, this is not a test, move to the centermost room in your home. That was scary. My sons were, I think they were about 3.5 and 5 at the time. And I knew that I had to kind of hold on to things because I didn't want them scared. And it's tough when something big is happening and you can hear it and you can feel it happening all around you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you're worried about family, and especially for those who aren't in the area, everybody else. And Facebook can be a beautiful thing. It's got its own light and shadow, but one of the really cool things is it can be a way for people to stay in contact. And, if the electricity goes out, then that makes it harder. So when you're hearing about all of this and you're not there to make sure that someone you love is okay, that can really bring in that feeling of helplessness. And really, helplessness in some ways comes from our desire to control. It comes from our desire to have things make sense. It comes from that desire to say, you know what, if I'm smart enough, if I'm quick enough, if I'm clever enough, if I'm strong enough, then I should be able to control this. I should be able to change what's happening. And when faced with something huge like a hurricane, there's no way you can control that. There's no way that you can say, wow, I can outthink the hurricane. No, you can only get out of its way because it is a force of nature. And when we deal with a force of nature, the best we can do is get out of the way. The best we can do is to be able to prepare as much as we can and to do whatever it is that we can, whether it's to evacuate and just say, okay, well, I have to take the chance that I may not have a home to come back to, but I will live and my loved ones will be alive and I'll have the things that I need. And the fact that that is such a tough decision. And if you've never been in that decision where you're trying to decide, wow, do I back out or don't I? Do I move my family? Is this ultimately going to be safe? That's a pretty intense thing. Here in California, we've been dealing with a lot of fires. And I know that there are people who were really hesitant to leave their homes, even with the risk that they might be trapped there. There's still an instinct to want to control part of it. And I understand that. I totally get it. And that's something that I struggle with constantly when I'm working with people, as either a chiropractor, or I'm doing counseling, or doing whatever it is that I can do to help them out. I know there's only a certain number of variables that I can affect, and that ultimately I have to face, that I can leave the rest to the universe, God, however you envision it. So the idea that part of the helplessness is that frustration. If you're in a relationship with somebody and they're not responding in a way that makes sense to you, there's a feeling of helplessness. And it's that imbalance between how you would treat somebody else and how you view that they're treating you. It's okay to feel frustrated at that. And it's important to remember that the only one who's required to meet your expectations is you. And being able to accept that makes it a lot easier to accept other people for exactly who they are. Because what they do doesn't have to make sense. What nature does doesn't have to make sense. And often it's very difficult to get the head wrapped around that, because there's always that aspect of, if I'm not in control, then I'm helpless. But there's a lot of stuff that falls in between that spectrum. There's a village that I had a chance to spend some time in the Brazilian Amazonian rainforest, which was amazing. We flew in, and then it was like a 4 or 5 hour drive, and then it was like 9 hours on a river to reach this little tiny village, all the way down the river and in the jungle. And one of the things about the rainforest is, at best, you learn to cooperate with nature. You learn to accept nature for exactly what it is. And one of the things that they have to accept is, occasionally all the ants will get together and go marching right through, and it will be they just devastate. Often, people will see videos of this huge march of these ants, and they go through, and if you're in the way of it, they can strip a cow down to the bones in a surprisingly short time. And it's big and it's scary, and they've had movies about it, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's this is huge. And the whole point is like, well, how can we prevent this? How can we prevent this? How can we control it? And when I spoke to the villagers, and I asked how they dealt with that, they said, we go somewhere else. We leave the village. And they leave until the ants have gone through. But when they get there, everything is clean. There isn't a speck of dirt or food or bugs or anything. They leave it absolutely clean. And so the idea is that process is not viewed as a negative thing. It's not viewed as, oh no, we've got to endure this. It's viewed as a time when you're able to step aside, let nature do what nature does, and then come in and appreciate the newness, appreciate the clean, appreciate the fact that what doesn't serve has been cleared away. And if we can learn to find harmony with that, if we can learn to realize that nature isn't our enemy, a rainbow is no more good than a hurricane is bad. They're simply events. They're events in nature. There's nothing personal about it. It's not a punishment. It's simply something that happens. And unfortunately, lives are affected by that. And if your life has been affected by that, I am so sorry. And I really hope the absolute best for you. And I know that there's many of you in different parts of the world that are watching this. So whatever it is that you go through, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it affects you. I'm sorry that, that sometimes there is a loss of life due to it. And it doesn't mean we can't find harmony with it. And maybe it may be an issue that's not as big as a hurricane. Maybe it's a problem with somebody that you know. Maybe it's discontent in your household. Maybe it's dealing with somebody who seems to continue to make very poor choices. And you just wish that you could open up their head and put a good choice in there and close it up and say, okay, go. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And anybody who has ever been a parent knows that it does not work that way. Yeah, I am so tremendously proud of my sons. I am so in awe of the fact that I got to experience them from before they came into this world, and that they were a part of me, and that I was able to nurture them from that point, and watch the gains that they made and how they learned to live their lives and how they learned to be in this world. Were all their choices that made me happy? Absolutely not. Just like I know not all of my choices made them particularly happy. We both did the best that we knew to do in the time. And that's one of the things that can be kind of hard sometimes, because when we make choices, it may not be the best choice, but it's the best we know to make with the tools that we have. And I've told them often, I may not have done everything right, but there was never a time that I did anything without thinking it was for the best for you. And I know that's the same thing applies for them to me. They weren't out to hurt me. They weren't out to be defiant. They were trying to figure out who they were. They were trying to decide where in this world they fit into, because we all have to figure that out. And one of the things that can, really trigger making it very difficult to figure out where we fit in the world is the fact that things happen that we can't control. If we could control absolutely everything in our lives, yeah, it would make things easier for a while, but then we wouldn't learn anything. We wouldn't move forward. And the fact that we can have the option to learn from something and then take that learning and use that when we move forward, because it is about these experiences in our lives allowing us to be more empowered, to be better prepared. I mean, it's been like 10 years really since a really intense, bad hurricane has hit that area. And after a while, it can get easy to just go, it's not going to be a big deal. I don't have to, have a bag ready. Well, I don't really think we need to stock up too much. And then something happens. And it's like, oh my gosh, how do we manage this? How do we move forward? And how do we be able, in the best way we can, to make the best of a bad situation? And that is such a powerful term. And I remembered when I was younger, it was used very often. Well, you just got to make the best of a bad situation. And, it's sort of like, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And those are both very, very cute, very inspirational little statements. And at the same time, sometimes it gets really serious. Sometimes it gets hard. Sometimes when it's like, okay, if life hands you about 4 or 5 lemons, yeah, we can make some lemonade. But what if a dump truck of lemons comes in and gets dumped on top of you? Kind of tough. I don't have a pitcher that big. And sometimes the stuff that comes in can get really, really overwhelming. And it's at that point that we start using our tools. And what are the tools? Well, as we learn and as we grow, we learn coping mechanisms. So you can think of your tools as a coping mechanism. And I remember I was talking to one of my nephews, and he was going through a really tough time. And I was trying to explain to him about tools and about how his choices affected his outcomes and what he could tap into. And so I knew he was really into cars. I knew he was really into, very, very technical child. And so I said, well, if I asked you to build me a car engine, could you do it? And he thought, and he said, well, yeah, I probably could if I had what I needed. And I said, okay, well, what kind of tools do you need? And he named off tools, and Lord knows, I think elves make my car work. So I had no idea what the tools were, but they were significant to him. So, it's like, oh, okay, well, you need that. And what else would you need? And you need this. Well, what else would you need? And so then he explained all the things that he would need. And I said, okay, well, what if I asked you to make me a car engine, but I only gave you a hammer? And he said, that's it? And I said, yep, you'd have to build me a car engine with only a hammer. And he said, well, I can't do that because I need this tool and I need this tool because a hammer is only going to do this much. But if I have this, then I can do these things. And so I explained to him that the choices he made, whether it was to respond just in anger, because that was kind of his go-to for the situation that had come up. And I said, okay, the idea that you responded to this situation with the only tool you had that you could reach for, which was anger. I said, what are some of the other things that you could have chosen to do? And he goes, well, I could have chosen to listen. It's like, okay, that's another tool. He said, I could have chosen to walk away. And I said, that's another tool. And so we went through and we talked about some of the other options. What were some of the other things that he could have done? And he was able to figure out on his own that, oh, I didn't have enough tools to deal with this. And it wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't that it was a thing of fault. And please, please, please understand that a tool is simply a tool. It is a way to get something done. And how you choose to use the tool, you want to be able to use it in the most effective way. But sometimes we panic. Sometimes, even though we need a screwdriver, we're going to reach for that hammer. And as the saying goes, if all you have is a hammer, then all the world has to be a nail. So yeah, I guess you can drive a screw in with a hammer. It's not going to be as effective as if you use a screwdriver. The same way that if your go-to emotional tool, your coping mechanism is, well, I'm going to take control of everything. As long as I'm in control, I'm okay. As long as I have that sense of, I'm moving the pieces around the chessboard, then I can be safe and I know I'm going to be okay. Well, sometimes that is not the way the situation goes. Sometimes we cannot have control. And in that moment, the choice is, do I decide that this situation is so upsetting that I'm just going to stand here and rant about how it shouldn't be what it is? Maybe I'm going to blame other people or other things or the universe or whatever else because this isn't going the way it should be going. Or we can decide, you know what? I can't stop this from happening. And all I can do is I can do everything that I can to reduce the impact of what's happening. I can mitigate the effects. I can take measures to go, okay, the hurricane is going to come, or, I have to go back into that situation with this particular person, or whatever it is. You can decide, okay, how can I be able to make the best of it? How can I create the best outcome for myself? And yes, you can be selfish. You can say, how can I create this to where I'm in peace? Because you know what? Once you're in peace, once you have created that eye of the storm, created that space for yourself, it's amazing how that effect moves out. It's amazing how other people will calm down, how other people, like, if folks are panicking and there's that one person who comes in saying, all right, everybody stop, calm down, we're going to be fine, let's take care of this. And what they do is they immediately start delegating. They say, okay, Why don't you go and you're going to get it, you're going to find us some water and take that person with you. And you are going to make sure we've got blankets, and you are going to take, go around and find out everybody's name, and, find out who we've got here and how many people we've got here. And you are going to go and look for how much food we've got. So basically what happens is people go from helplessness to having purpose. They go from, oh, wow, okay, blankets. Yeah, I can find blankets. Because that allows us to create forward motion. We're not stuck. We're not feeling stagnant. And one of the things about helplessness is that feeling of stagnation. It's that feeling that we can't do anything. And that's an illusion. We can always choose to do something. I mean, it may not be the best idea, but it's going to be, the best thing to do at the time. And being able to take a minute and go, all right, what is my instinct to do right now? And is that helpful? Is that the best tool I can pull out of the toolkit? Or maybe I need to set that one aside. Maybe I don't need a hammer. Maybe I need a screwdriver. Maybe I need something else to be able to help me manage this situation, to have an outcome that I'm really going to be able to work with, that's going to bring me peace, and that's going to be helpful for others. And like I said, it doesn't take a hurricane to trigger something that makes you feel helpless. It may be just being overwhelmed by, he said, she said, and public opinion. And I really don't like getting into the whole political thing, because, frankly, if it works for you, go with it. If when you look into your heart and that's where you are, be authentic, be yourself, be respectful, because not everybody has to agree with you, but be in that place of your authenticity. I don't care how anybody votes, but I care that they do. I care that people take that into themselves as to what is your truth? Where is your heart? When you look around the world, what decisions do you believe will make the world a better place? The Native American tradition supports that our choices, we have to take into account how it's going to affect the next 7 generations. And by making those choices, it's like, okay, what is the long term? And if you make a choice that no one else agrees with, it is your choice. It is your freedom. It is your ability to say, you know what? This is where my truth lies. Not in, I'm choosing this because I'm afraid. I'm choosing this because I'm kind of being bullied into choosing this. I'm choosing this because everybody's telling me it's a good idea. Choose because of what's inside of you. And it doesn't matter what you choose, as long as you remember your choice is your choice. It's not easy. It really isn't. Authenticity is one of the biggest challenges for most people, because we are communal beings. We live in a world, and we are hardwired to work with other people, to interact with other people, to not be isolated. One of the biggest punishments that can be done for anyone is to separate them. In a prison, it's solitary confinement. In some cultures, it's the idea of being shunned, the idea of being made separate from the group. We're kind of pack animals, and we want to be a part of our pack, and we want to be a valued part of our pack. And at the same time, we also have that inner striving to want to be individuals, to want to find our way and our path, and what is the meaning for me being here. And those aren't mutually exclusive. You can be a part of the community and still have that uniqueness. And the main requirement is the willingness to be authentic. And authenticity is it's a challenge. Oh my God, it's a challenge. And it's important. And it's your right to be you, authentically you, and have that be okay. And it's important to find a community, find friends where it's okay for you to be you. It's okay for you to make choices that aren't the same as anyone else's. My mom had a saying that if you love it, I love it for you. And when I meet people now, I have friends who are across every possible spectrum, politically, energetically, spiritually. It's everything from devout Christians to atheists and conservatives to liberals and everybody. And the reason that we all get to be friends is because we know that there are other parts of each person than that one opinion, than that one viewpoint. This person may be a staunch conservative, but they really love, old comedies the way I do. And we have fun and we talk about those. Or maybe someone else is like an absolute atheist, and yet we really like the same video games that we play. Everyone has shadow and light. Everyone has differing opinions. And it's sort of like, well, accepting somebody for all of who they are starts with accepting ourselves for all of who we are, in our truth, in our authentic self, and being okay with the fact that a lot of people aren't going to like it. And there's going to be a lot of people who do. Because I guarantee whatever you believe, however you hold it, there are other people who feel the same. And with the world of technology and the internet and all of that, we can be able to connect with each other. We can be able to say, oh my gosh, you feel that way too? Oh, it is so cool. It's like when you watch a movie and not a lot of people like it. And then you find that person, it's like, oh my gosh, I love that too. And it's that comfort that, oh, wow, we're a community. We can talk about this. Maybe I can't talk about it with everybody. We all have different relationships. We have different, I like to think of it as spiritual contracts. We have different spiritual contracts with different people. One person, your contract with them may not be deep philosophical discussions. It may be that that's the person you just love going bowling with. So that's your bowling friend, as opposed to your deep philosophical discussion friend, as opposed to your going to movies friend, as opposed to your going dancing. Maybe not all your friends like to go dancing, but the ones that do, when it's time to go dancing, that's who you call. We don't have to be all things to everybody, and everybody doesn't have to be all things to us. Finding that beautiful, unique thing that binds people together. It's so special. And it can be as straightforward as that. It's like, well, if they're my friend, they should like all my friends. No. You can find a lot of peace in giving up on that concept. Because not everybody has the same spiritual contract with everybody else. And you can still walk together and be civil together. When my friends all get together, it's not about, deciding whose side wins. It doesn't have to be about winners or losers. And often if there's somebody who like feels something that I really don't resonate with, or that, really kind of, makes me want to scratch my head and go, I don't get it. Usually what I do is I'll say, you know what? I don't understand why you feel the way you do, but I'd like to. Can you explain it to me? Using that phrase, I have found, creates an amazing opportunity, because one, the person isn't feeling defensive. They're being asked. It's like, you know what? I don't get it, but I want to. I really do. And in this space between us, as two people who just want to understand each other, can you explain it to me? And the second part of that is just listening. Close your mouth and listen. One mouth, two ears. Listen twice as much as you speak. And when you do that, you find out so much. And you usually find out that they're just as confused about how you think as you're confused about how they think. And that can be okay, because you can learn to move past it. You can learn to be able to say, oh, okay. And at the end, it doesn't mean that you have to agree with each other. It just means that, oh, you know what? I understand your perspective now. Thank you for explaining it. And then you go and talk about video games or the old movies or go bowling or whatever it is that thing that is the part of your contract that binds you. But you've both come away with more depth to the relationship, more depth to understanding, and you've made it safe for each other. There are topics that are like, walking through a minefield. And I find the best way to deal with that is just to acknowledge, you know what? I don't understand it. And with what I know, I really don't feel that I can support that. And I support you supporting what you believe in. If it works for you, it works for me for you. And if you love it, I love it for you. It is a way to build a connection as opposed to build a wall. It's a way to create a bridge between people, because most of the time we just want to be heard. Sometimes the idea of feeling helpless can just be shifted just by being heard, just by having somebody go, you know what? This is obviously really bothering you or frightening you or creating anger in you. Tell me about it. What are you feeling? What does this mean to you? And once somebody has the chance to go, you know what? This is why I'm upset about this going on and this going on. When somebody's had the chance, because once you say something out loud, you actually hear yourself saying it. And often a solution can come just by being given a space that someone is listening to you. Someone is actually hearing you out. They're not interrupting you. They're just waiting for you to say what you need to say. We can feel a lot less helpless just by having the ability to vent. Or maybe you feel less helpless by having the opportunity to cry. I mean, things can get overwhelming. Things can be hard. And crying is an expression of energy. It allows energy to shift. It's not a bad thing. I mean, sometimes we cry when we're really, really happy. All it is a release of energy. And sometimes if someone needs to just get that out, and they have somebody who lets them and lets them just cry. And then afterwards, everybody, you blow your nose and you wipe your eyes and, maybe go throw some cold water on your face. And then you go, okay, now I can deal with it. Now I can look at it. Often the path to the eye of the storm is through tears. It's through letting go. It's through releasing that desire to control it, the illusion that you can control it. Because the more you feel that you want to control something that's beyond your control, the only place it can go is helplessness, hopelessness, and right into a downward spiral. It's our attachments that create the anxiety, our attachment to how it should be, our attachment to, well, this shouldn't be happening. It hasn't done this for a long time. Why is it doing it now? Why is that house saved and this house isn't? Why me? And when we get past the need to know why me, then you're not feeling as helpless. If you accept that sometimes things happen, what they used to have a book, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. And it was a study in being able to find peace with the fact that sometimes crappy stuff just happens. Sometimes, what do they say? Sometimes the bear wins. Sometimes, you can't change it. What you can't change, you can adapt to. What you can't change, you can accept. Because ultimately, it's fun until it isn't, and it sucks until it doesn't. And when you can accept that sometimes, for whatever reason, it's just going to suck or, be lousy or not be what you want it to be. Because at some point, it's going to switch. At some point, you're going to get exactly what you want. And at some point, you may not get what you want, but you get what you need. And it is a good thing to remember that, especially in the times when things are hard, when you're scared, when it's dark, when you don't know what to do, when you feel alone. That's the playground that helplessness plays in. And then you go into hopelessness, which takes, I can't control this, I can't stop this, it's bad, I'm scared. And you take it that next step going, and it's never going to get any better. That's when it really gets scary. When not only are we challenged by the situation that is, there's that part of us that says, well, get used to it because it's not getting any better. We're not going to be any happier. We're never going to have abundance. We're never going to be able to afford anything. We're never going to have that perfect job or that perfect life. Or I'm never going to find what gives my life meaning. Yeah, those are some pretty hard stories that you can tell yourself. And yeah, it can be really rough. That's why we turn to community. That's why we reach out to people. That's why we look for the people who can hold it, at least in that moment, a little bit better than we can. And believe me, even those people have moments where they can't quite hold it, where it does get overwhelming. And then maybe we hold it for them because we're feeling a little bit stronger in that moment. To say, hey, all right. We know it's bad, but we're going to be fine. We're going to be okay. Keep focused. What do we need to do? What can we do? And if all you can do is just hunker down and wait for it to pass, then that's what you do. But you do that knowing that it's going to pass. No matter what you are experiencing, it will pass. Now, here's the important part. If you let it. Because if you decide that that moment is the reality that's going to be the reality forever, then yeah, you're going to stick yourself firmly and squarely in that moment. It doesn't matter if you go there. Just don't pitch a tent. It doesn't matter if you feel hopeless or helpless. But don't stay there. Don't let hard stories in your head, most of which didn't even start off with you, most of which were given to you in some way. Don't let those stories become your reality. If you have to tell yourself a story, tell yourself a good one, because either way, you're making it up about all the bad stuff that could happen. So think about all the good stuff that could happen. Think about the fact that, you know what? At some point, this is going to pass. You get that eye of the storm. And at some point, the eye of the storm will settle and you'll have a moment to breathe, to regroup, knowing the other half. But once that other half passes, you're done. You go and you go, okay, now what? So the next place is to assess what happened afterwards, and then to be able to either rebuild or let it go and move on. Either way, there's opportunity. Either way, there's tomorrow. And I know that sometimes it can be really hard to see a tomorrow that's any better than the moment you're in, especially maybe if things have been hard for a really long time. And it's easy to fall into that. It's happening to me. I have no choice. There's always choice. You can't choose what somebody else does. You can't choose the things you have no control over. What you can choose is how you respond to it. And that goes back to the tools in the toolkit. If all you have is a hammer, all the world has to be a nail. And there's a lot of very cool things about having a lot of tools, because sooner or later we're just going to be going through it. It's like a hammer, a screwdriver, spatula, egg beater. And there are times when we go through the entire kit and go, okay, none of this is going to solve my problem. At that point, you realize that maybe this problem is being brought to you for a reason. That this is about growth. It's about learning. And sometimes the only way past something is through it. Accept that it's no fault of yours when things happen that are beyond your control. It is no fault of yours when someone else makes choices that you have no control over, or creates opinions that you have no control over. I often talk to people about, well, this person is saying this about me, and this person is saying this about me, and it's not fair, and I'm upset. And it's like, okay, so what they say about you, is it true? Well, no. Then why are you worried about it? Well, because they're making other people think it, but it's not true. The people who really care about you, the people who matter, will come to you and say, hey, I heard this about you. And you can say, nope, it's not true. I had a friend who was very, 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 down because she was, her parents were really kind of giving her a bad time. And I mean, she's a grown woman, but, they're still treating her like she's a child. And they say really hard things to her, in the guise of, well, we love you, so that's why we're saying these hurtful things. Which, no, that is so wrong. It almost defies the definition. And so she was really getting down about it. And I told her that, I said, well, how would you feel if I called you an eggplant? She said, what? I said, how would you feel if I called you an eggplant? And she said, well, I think it was stupid. I said, no, what if I insisted that you were an eggplant? You are a small purple vegetable. And she just started laughing. I said, why are you laughing? I've decided you're an eggplant. And she said, well, that's silly. I said, why? And she said, well, obviously I'm not an eggplant. And I said, so the fact that I've decided you're an eggplant doesn't mean you're an eggplant. She said, no. So I asked her, so why is it you're so quick to accept other things that people say about you that aren't true, that aren't true? And yet you make that your reality, but you're not willing to say you're an eggplant. And she said, well, that's different. I said, no, it's not. Honestly, it's not. When somebody creates a story about you, you can choose whether or not you buy into it. If there's truth in it, own it. You know what? They're saying that I'm not a patient person. Well, maybe I'm not a patient person. Maybe I need to take a look at that. But if somebody is saying something about you that isn't true, to invest energy in it is just as silly as worrying about, well, maybe I am an eggplant, but they think I'm an eggplant. which was really kind of funny because the next time her parents called, she was, and they're giving her the whole thing, and her mom was giving her a problem. And she said she stopped and said, "I am not an eggplant," and hung up the phone. She said she felt oddly empowered. And then her dad called back, and he was very worried. He said, "Baby, you're not a vegetable. I don't care. Woman, did you call her a vegetable? I didn't call her a vegetable." And the idea of it becoming such a silly thing allowed her to release all that hardness that she had around it. There is nothing like turning something into the silliness that it is and making it obviously as silly as it is, to release energy, release pent-up energy, to allow you to step forward and be in that place that you want to be, and to enjoy life, because life is a tremendously precious thing. What it is that we experience in the world, fires, earthquakes, hurricanes, floods. The earth is changing and things shift. We are completely helpless in the face of it. But because we realize we have no control, we can find peace in that. That, okay, this is an event that's happening. How can we best manage it? Because once you figure that out, you never have to feel helpless. Once you decide that there is no reason for you to feel helpless in a situation that you were never meant to control. And as I said, you can't control the weather. You can't control how other people choose to be. You can't control the stories that they tell themselves. What you can control is how you respond to it, how deeply you let it get dug into yourself, into your heart, into your spirit. Because once you decide that, if you decide, you know what, I am not buying into that, I reject your reality and replace it with my own. I think that's from Mythbusters. I don't know. I think so. I'm sure somebody else said it. But reject the reality that somebody else puts on you because it doesn't belong to you. It's almost like stealing, because it's taking something that doesn't belong to you, including what somebody else decides should be your reality. You can't be helpless in that. Or if you're going to be, understand you're doing it consciously. If you want to make a choice to be helpless, well, I'll let you. I hope you don't. I hope you realize what an amazing thing you are in this world. What an amazing part of the universe you are. There's never been anyone exactly like you, and there will never be again anyone exactly like you. Even for those who believe in reincarnation, each life is unique and different. You're the only one of you we have, which in my mind makes you tremendously important. It makes what you've gone through tremendously important. It makes your contribution to this world tremendously important. And if you don't do anything more than smile at someone or tell them that the color they're wearing really looks good on them and makes their eyes, really brighten up. It was broken down for me a long time ago that sometimes life can be very tricky, and sometimes managing it can be pretty simple. Do your own work on the things within you that you want to shift. Love your concept of creator, however you hold that, and serve in the best way that you believe based on your perceptions that support that spirit. And third, make a few people smile along the way. Be able to help lighten the load and lighten the burden. If you can walk in those each day, not so bad. You're doing all right. You're going to make mistakes. We all are. It's the nature of being us. And it doesn't matter. Honestly, we learn from our mistakes. The trick is to try not to make the exact same mistake too many times. It helps to have someone you can talk to. It helps to have support. It helps when you're not sure what to do, that you've got someone that you can count on to listen to you and to say, okay, what do you think? What do you want to do about this? And by asking you questions guides you to figure out really what it is that you do want to do. Because usually we know, we just struggle against it a little bit. We need to have somebody tell us, you know what, you got this. You don't need anybody else to figure this out for you. You've got this. I believe in you. And those 4 words can be so powerful. Because when somebody looks at you and says, I believe in you, suddenly you start believing maybe you can, especially if it's someone you respect. If it's someone that you admire and you respect, and they look at you and say, hey, I believe in you. You got this. Don't worry about it. Then we can do that. We can be able to say, you know what? Well, I guess, I'm going to put on my glasses here and I'm going to take a good, close look at what it is that I need to do. And I'm going to go from there. I'm going to go with my strengths. So, trust yourself. Know that even though I've never met some of you, maybe I will. But even then, even if we never meet, I believe in you. I trust you. You've got this. Trust yourself. And you don't have to worry about feeling helpless, because you know you're connected to something so much bigger. And again, for those who are affected by Hurricane Matthew, know that my thoughts and prayers are with you. And I hope that everything's going to be okay. And even if it gets hard and scary, you're going to make it. So, thank you for joining me. We went a little bit longer today, but I really felt that this was a topic that I wanted to make sure that we really explored, because right now it's so important that when we add feeling helpless to all the other things, it only makes it worse. Trust yourself. You can do this. So we'll get together again next week, and you can like, share, subscribe. On Facebook, we have Medicine Walk with Dr. Ayleen. You can join our group, and we're growing that community. Click subscribe on YouTube, and you can follow me on Twitter. So until next time. Oh, I almost forgot. Soon, I wrote a book called Frequencies, and it was tremendously important to me, and I've had a lot of really good responses. So I've decided that with help to create an audiobook, and that's going to be on YouTube, and we're going to be posting information about that as to when that's going to be launched. So keep posted. And in the meantime, I wish you balance. I wish you blessings from my heart to yours. Bye-bye.